Parts
Is that right?
out of just blocks. You know,
It is.
so
Have fun.
Enjoy.
A lot of machining equipment.
yes, yeah.
One more again.
Welcome. Thanks.
Did somebody check the front?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Pretty good, but we better check.
No, you're
It's like
fine.
another one of those meetings where nobody comes and it's because the door's
It's
locked.
Pop Rocks. Watermelon Pop Rocks.
Or is that a 20 ounce? It looks smaller.
No, it's a 16.
Yeah. Inflation.
Yeah.
Sell you a smaller bottle, charge the
Trying to
same.
pass it off to the 20.
Yep.
Absolutely.
How are you? I'm good.
Isn't it like 19.2 ounces though? then?
16.
This is a 16.
Yeah, but I know, but the 20 ounces like 19.2,
Oh,
something like that.
Probably.
0.6, so they could legally
They
round
have
up. 5 point,
This, they don't run up to 17.
19.51.
It's 16.9.
So we did bowling today. Or
How are you doing?
morning and afternoon.
Good.
City Hall came out of morning. In first place.
Carried us.
All right.
And Cassie.
By the
and
end of the
Sid.
day, we went third.
With Parks and Rec.
Park and Rec. And then we actually got beat up by Public Works
Wow.
by 2 pins.
Wow.
2 pins.
Wow.
I'm gonna practice between now and December, just in case you have your bowling party again.
Okay.
It can't hurt.
Yep. Well, that's the only time I practice in December for August.
Close.
I know, we're close. Let's go ahead and get started. We'll call this meeting to order, 5:59. The first item on our agenda tonight is public comment. It's a chance for citizens to bring forward a concern that may or may not be on our agenda. It is not a question and answer. So it is just a chance for comment. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the room who has a public comment? Seeing none, I will close the in-room public comment. We did have 2 emailed in, so I will have those read into the record.
Hello, my name is Tracy Beatty. I live at 1276 Doral Drive, Syracuse, Utah. My property shares a border with a property located at 3800 West Hammond Lane, owned by Danny Hammond. I attended last week's Planning Commission meeting on August 20th to get more details on Danny's request to rezone his property from R1 and A1 to R3. I initially had concern about groundwater because I was incorrectly told there was not a land drain on Hammond Lane for new homes to tie into. During the meeting, the original land developer, Mike McBride, pointed out that there is in fact a land drain on Hammond Lane towards the west end of the property for the new homes to drain into. Hearing this alleviated any concern I had about groundwater, and in my opinion should have also alleviated the concern of the members on the Planning Commission. Instead, they approved the rezoning with the requirement of a groundwater feasibility study. I think the feasibility study is unnecessary at this point due to the fact that there is a land drain that is readily available and accessible for the new homes that will be built. I am in favor and 100% support the rezone to R3 and the sale of the property to Brock Johnson to develop and build homes on. I know the quality and kind of homes Brock builds because he built my home I am living in now, that adjacent to the Hammond property, and love it and have had a great experience building with him. I trust him and know his homes will add beauty and value to the neighborhood and community we live in. Thank you, Tracy Beatty. To whom it may concern, my name is Greg Gotteridge. I live at 3692 West Hammond Lane. The proposed rezone touches the northwest corner of my property. I am in favor of the zoning change to R3. Last week, I was also in favor of the change given that all factors had been taken into consideration. I made comments concerning land drains and the concern that the homes in the proposed rezone area be connected to a land drain. The motion was passed by the Planning Commission with a condition for a high-level feasibility study. It is in my understanding that that has been completed. My concerns about the land drain were answered last week in the meeting, and there is a land drain there and the subdivision can be connected to. I am again in favor of the rezone should take place. Thanks, Greg Gotteridge.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number C. This is the presentation from Wall Consulting Group regarding road condition studies. We'll bring that group to the table with Robert.
Here.
I don't need to move you. Let's bring to the chair.
Yeah. You good?
So this is Clancy Black and he is Wall Consultant Group who did a study for us on our roads, the road conditions, road service life. And he's here to present his findings with you.
Thanks, Robert. So yeah, we worked with Robert and Brian on the road condition study, which I believe you have the results of in your packet. A little bit of background here. So, as you all know, this is working towards a potential utility fee analysis for funding road maintenance. And so the first step is to baseline the current conditions of your pavements in the city. So that was this first phase. We visited every single city-owned and maintained road, assessing the current condition. We're looking for cracks in the road, rutting, potholes, anything like that to assess the condition of the roadway. And then we rate each of those roadway conditions based on what's called the PASER rating, PASER, to determine how many years we expect that pavement to continue to provide us a serviceable roadway. Stop me anytime you have questions, by the way. I want to talk about service life for a minute, just because that's important to understand through this process. So pavements are not like used cars. When we build them, they have an expected service life. And if they are maintained properly, they will make that service life. And every time we perform a maintenance treatment, a slurry seal and overlay, it can essentially renew that service life. So your local road streets have about a 20-year service life when they're built. Meaning if it was built today and we didn't do any maintenance at all for 20 years, at that point, it would be almost gravel and unusable. But if at 7 to 10 years, there's a slurry seal, that essentially resets that pavement's life and you're going to get another 20 years of it. So with a good maintenance plan, your pavements will get that life and continue to get that life as long as you have the appropriate funding and appropriate treatments. So that's what this study was all about, is baselining the current remaining service life for all of your pavements so that you know as a city which areas should be maintained first. And in the next phase of the study, that helps us develop a management plan for maintaining those pavements and understand what kind of cost that's going to require for your pavements. So that's a little bit of background. Are we able to pull up the map or the charts from the packet? Might be helpful to look at those together. Any questions on the background information? That clear enough? Okay.
I don't, is it this one?
Yeah, we can start there. So this shows all of your locally owned roads based on that rating scale that they were given. You'll notice this does not include the state highways. The state does their own pavement maintenance for those. You're not responsible for that. What is good in this and the charts that you'll see below is that you do have currently a good distribution of pavement conditions. And you might think, why is that good? We want everything to be perfect. You can't afford to maintain everything. If it was all built one day and 7 years later, you have to resurface everything. So that's what is good given your situation today. There's a good distribution from good to fair or poor condition. So building a pavement management plan now is really to your benefit because you'll be able to keep up with that year after year. And getting the funding is of course critical for that. The other good thing is you don't have that many that are in what I would call really, really poor condition. There are some, there always is, but the majority of your roadways are at least in fair or just below fair condition, up to good condition. And you can of course see some, you can tell age of neighborhoods a lot looking at this as well. You can see where some new neighborhoods were built and everything's brand new. Where older neighborhoods may have need for maintenance soon. Go ahead and scroll down if you don't mind. So this shows the number of roadway segments based on their remaining service life. So we segmented all your roadways basically by block in order to classify one block at a time. And this shows how many there are at each service life. So you have a good number that have 16 to 20 years of service life still. You'll notice some gaps in between the bars. That's just a result of how the calculation works, that there tends to be 1 year gaps in how this translation of the rating to the service life goes. And then there are some in poor condition, you of course see there, but the good thing is you don't have a huge volume of roads that are in the poor condition right now. Go ahead and scroll to the next graph, please. This is essentially the same data, but shown by the Pazer rating. So again, it's showing a fairly good distribution with a good amount in 8, 9, or 10 good condition. You'll notice from rating 5 to 8, the number steadily increases as you go down the rating scale. So what that means is kind of what I said earlier, getting a pavement plan in place now is really critical because in 4 to 6 years, if nothing was done or not enough was done, those large bars at rating 5 and 6 would be in poor condition. And you'd have what we call in the pavement management world, a sleeping giant, where there's a lot of expense waiting there that you're not going to be able to manage. So again, it's a good time and you're in a good place to get the management plan set up now. The rest of the memo is a lot of details that I find really interesting, but you all might not find as interesting. So I'm happy to cover background here if anyone read anything that they want to know more about. Otherwise, I'd encourage you to read this, or Robert, I don't know if there's anything in the memo you wanted to point out.
Probably this graph.
Okay.
A good thing to go over.
Let's-
You want to go down maybe a couple.
Yeah, let's do that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. So part of determining the expected service life of your pavements was in our assessment, we look at the condition today and we need to see how long has this pavement lasted and how long do we expect it to last after today. We were able to use the county data about when when the zoning was approved, the subdivision was approved, excuse me. And we use that as a surrogate for when your neighborhood roads were constructed, because many of them were built with the subdivision and homes being built. So this graph here plots your roadway sections with their estimated age on the bottom based on the subdivision year, and their Pazer rating on the left side, the y-axis, to help us correlate the age and year of installation and the current rating. I want to scroll down to the next graph here. We're going to go back and forth for a minute. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks. And what you'll notice here is there's kind of a left edge trend line that we have in the dashed line there. through some analysis and reviewing the data, we're able to determine that that is about what your expected life of pavements is today. So a brand new neighborhood road, like I said earlier, if totally untreated, not maintained at all, would last about 20 years. And that's what we were able to learn from this graph. Now, all of the red dots to the right of that line, that is what shows you the value of pavement maintenance. So let's take if you look at the 5 line for Payzer rating, there are pavements that are 3 years old on the far left, all the way out to almost 30 years old on the far right. So those older pavements that are at a 5 rating, those have had maintenance once or twice or 3 times through the years. And that's what allows them to be serviceable for 30+ years. So this graph helps you understand the life of the pavement that you can expect and shows the value of maintenance, where you can get 30, 40, 50 years or more out of a roadway with proper maintenance. Any questions about that analysis or results there? Okay. So your local roads, we expect about 20 years of service life. For the higher volume roads you maintain, collectors and minor arterials, again, not the state highways, but your more heavily traveled city roads, we expect about 15 years. That's based on comparison with other cities and agencies to look at how those higher volume roads handle the traffic. Questions about that so far? Okay. Let's scroll down a little bit more, please. Okay, pause there on that table. Thank you. So this shows the rating based on the analysis performed for the city. And the good part is this provides a tool for your engineering or public works department moving forward, where if they need to do a smaller scale assessment, they can go out and rate the roads or hire someone to, and okay, this road was rated a 7. We've got about 13 years left of this. Let's do some maintenance now, get it back up to 20. So this initial assessment was more effort because we had to establish the baseline. This table here gives you a tool moving forward for continued analysis of your roadways. And then scroll down, I think there's another table. Okay, so this is the same table just for your higher volume roads. So when they're brand new, you expect about 15 years, whereas with the neighborhood roads, about 20 years, just due to the volume of traffic and types of use. So this was all phase 1 of this process, to look at a utility fee for road maintenance. I wanted to step into phase 2 and what happens next. Everyone good with that? Okay. So phase 2 is now taking this and performing the planning process to develop a pavement management plan, and then the financial analysis to understand what that is going to cost. So the pavement management plan, we've looked at that map, look at each of those roadway sections and say, roadways in this condition with these types of distresses, potholes or cracking or rutting, we're going to apply this type of treatment. And that treatment costs us X dollars per square foot. Roads in this condition, we're going to apply this treatment and it costs the city X dollars per square foot. With that, and that's cost analysis, we then make a plan saying, you've got 20 miles of road that are going to need to be treated next year with this type of treatment. That's going to cost you X dollars. So that pavement management plan gives you a 5, 10, 20-year outlook of what your pavement management is going to cost you year after year and moving forward. And that it's similar to the impact fee analysis that I think you had done recently. Was it last year? Yeah. Similar to the impact fee analysis, that gives you a cost of maintaining those roads, which then the financial analysis is done to certify that, which then allows you to develop the utility fee. And that utility fee says, okay, here's the budget that we're going to require to maintain our pavements. Here's the number of trips that we expect on our roads. That develops a cost per trip per, I believe it's per, not zoning type, it's land use type, per residence, per commercial building, industrial building. And then you can include that fee in utility fees directly to that land use for the pavement maintenance. So phase one is the condition assessment, the baselining that we have. Phase two is that management plan and cost analysis that gets you to where you know what that cost would be if you were to assess the utility fee. That covers all the high points. I don't know, Robert, is there anything we missed or you want to
Yeah,
cover?
basically, this was just to let you know where things are with the process, more of a check-in and see if you had any comments or thoughts as it goes forward, before we get too far ahead of us. Figured we'd bring it to you and get your input. See if you like the direction we're going.
I like the roadmap. It's easy to see where that dark red is. I was like, ooh, I'm familiar with those potholes.
It's good to see that we've got varying ages
Yeah.
and life expectancy of roads so that we don't have everything
Yeah.
hit at once.
So that's
Yeah.
good news for you for sure.
Vast array of colors.
Any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Okay,
Pretty straightforward.
well, I'm gonna move us forward and we'll look forward to the next phase. Item D has
Thank you.
some items within it that are planning items. We'll invite Noah to the table. The first item, number one, is a pre-application consultation. CW Land has purchased some property through the UDOT auction. And they would like us to consider advising them on their proposal to change what is currently R1 and A1 to a PRD. Now, you saw the proposal in the packet. Is there anything you'd like to bring to the table as questions as the applicant?
So you're asking if I.
Yes,
okay,
I'm asking
Sorry.
if you want us to
I
know
just want to
anything before
clarify.
we.
I just want to
before we
clarify your
react
question.
to it.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So yeah, my name is Chase Freebairn. I represent CW Land, and yes, we recently just purchased the ground from UDOT. And you know, nobody has a monopoly on good ideas, and we want to be a good partner with Syracuse City, and we appreciate Mayor Mon and council letting us come here tonight and simply just pick your brain, ask you a few questions. This is still pretty high level. Obviously, everything here you see is conceptual, but you know, obviously we've got in this packet, in this layout, 137 units, 4.59 units to the acre, which is all single family development. If you scroll down some of the next photos, keep going. You can see the Century Project to the north. You can see, you know, Stillwater to the south. And then you've got Village
North is
Bluff.
to the right.
Or yeah, north is to the right in this example. Trailside, the Ovation Project, and Castle Creek, and keep scrolling down. And then, yeah, that's actually now that's looking south. This is on the western portion, looking north at the Ovation Project there to the north. So then you can scroll down. All familiar with the general plan, zoning map. If you scroll down to the site plan, here we go. So the previous slides showed the general plan. One of the potential uses that could be on this property is the PRD zone, which is the zone we intend to apply for. You know, pending feedback we received from you as council, and we're proposing 137 units on roughly 30 acres, and 2 different product segment types. And we want to build a sound wall here. We think a sound wall in this neighborhood would go a long ways. And I think frankly, it's kind of shocking UDOT didn't put a sound wall through here, but we've communicated with them that we're willing to build it and pay for it. It'll make for a better community. We're proposing 20% plus some amenity packages, which we'd like to integrate with trails and connections throughout the project. So we feel it's a It's a solid contribution to the neighborhood. It's the right balance and density. We're not proposing anything crazy in terms of, you know, high density townhomes or anything more than that. So this is just single family cottage detached homes, and that's pretty much it at this point. Again, high level. Any comments or direction you guys can provide us would be very helpful.
My first question would be maybe even towards the council. Absent the issue of timing, which I am anticipating will be an issue, are there any better uses for this particular property? I think the use fits here. But I can't say that I've thought through every option. I don't see how commercial goes into this area.
I would agree with that. I don't think it's commercially viable property.
Yeah.
It's too far back from any main road.
I mean, the use to me fits. I know that there, like I said, there may be some issues on timing of this, but I think the general project and the location is a good use, but I'm certainly willing to hear other thoughts on what might fit better.
Any other thoughts you'd like to share with CW?
Yes, I have a question. Since you're the developers, after you put in the roads and sewers, what happens next?
Like in terms of when we
In
go
terms of
vertical or.
who's building the houses?
Okay, so that's a great question. CW Land is the development arm that owns the ground. Coal West, which is basically another home building arm division of CW, same company, you know, same pair of pants, different pocket, so to speak. And we would be the builder is our plan. So we plan to be the builder. There is the possibility that could change in the future. I don't have a crystal ball.
Are you familiar with the fields? what happened
I'm
with your
aware of the
company?
project, yes.
So for those of you that are unfamiliar, CW Land was supposed to do this before and ended up selling that to two separate entities, one being Woodside and the other one being American Homes for Rent. And that's how we ended up with a whole entire neighborhood of rental homes owned by a corporation in our city. So that's a big problem for me. So I would like to know what comes next.
Yeah, so we have no intention of selling to, you know, for rent investors. I mean, we can put that in a development agreement. I mean, there's different things we can do to help memorialize that maybe can give you more assurances. I'm not familiar with the entitlement process with the fields. I know you are, and it predates me. Unfortunately, I'd love to learn more about it, frankly, but we have every intention of building the homes in here. How many we choose to build, I don't know. Whether we sell some portion off to another builder down the road, that's always a possibility. That's not our first choice at this point. But it's hard to say because, I mean, this is 24 months away, possibly, 18 months away before we get to that point. But as of right now, we intend to be the exclusive builder.
Service. Yeah. It's always is though.
I mean, I don't know that there's a much better use for this land than residential.
I think timing of this project is a concern for me, only that we have so many issues or so many entitled projects on the books. We are building at a rate that is forcing our budget to pull forward things that we didn't plan for years to come. And so I'm concerned at adding any extra density when we have a challenge with providing for our citizens under the budget that we have today.
I think that's a valid concern. We just have so many projects that are backlogged that haven't even been built yet, that are in the queue.
And when you say this won't start for 18 to 24 months, that means that I've just got to push that rolling problem a couple more years into the future.
And I don't know the exact timing necessarily. I mean, part of it depends on, this process and I'm just thinking of a time when you have the first home in the ground, fully finished, completed, being sold to a consumer. The total build out could be several years for sure. But those are all great points.
I think we need as a council to slow down on building in Syracuse right now. To slow it down and concentrate on all the entitled housing that's going in, almost 1,000 units, and just not add anything else right now to the books.
I feel like developers are gonna have a hard time with that they're not paying attention to what we're saying in our meetings, and they still continue to go and buy the UDOT land, thinking that they're going to be able to develop it. And over the last 4 or 5 meetings, we've said, we don't want to keep doing this. And nobody's clearly listening. So now you guys know how I feel.
Well, I think that's a very good point. And the issue is, I mean, could this be built on today? Yeah, but under the current zoning, I don't see us increasing the density.
It's not
Yeah.
benefiting our
It doesn't
citizens
help
right
us
now.
right now. It increases our problem.
I feel like CW created a problem for us already in Syracuse, and I'd rather not have another one.
I'm not against CW, I just am against right now continuing to add that load of high density housing when we need to finish all the projects that are going to be built out in the next 5 or 6 years.
One thing I'd like to add in, can you guys hear me, first of all?
Oh, Jordan, yes, hi.
Hi, everybody.
How was it?
One thing I think would be interesting, again, I agree with a lot of what they're saying here is we do need to slow this down. So, but as far as feedback on the project itself, one of the nice things is you're right up against Jensen Pond. I guess I would be curious what your thoughts are. And again, I know it would change the way this layout works is do a little bit more of a lower density around Jensen, as well as add in some additional trails. You have one trail that kind of connects the neighborhood over into Jensen, but I would love to try and get some more trails through this neighborhood to kind of just tie it into the whole trail system, the immigration trails, and just have it connect all the way through, just to add more of the Jensen feel to this area. I guess I'd like to throw that in there as just trying to keep the trails going and make this a little more bicycle friendly, more trail tie-in points.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Okay. Unless you have any more questions for us, I think we've given you what we have.
Okay. I appreciate the feedback and the time. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. The next item is recommendation from Planning Commission application for zone change of property located at 2751 and 1000 West, A1 to professional office. Applicant is Whipple Point LLC. Noah, what can you tell us about this? It's been to Planning Commission.
It's been to planning commission, they're forwarding a recommendation for approval. Currently, the building is on a agriculturally zoned, it's kind of like a grandfather type thing, so rezoning it would give us more assurances of what will be permitted on the property rather than relying on grandfather use. And the property across the street is zoned PO. So it seemed like a pretty common sense thing that planning commission's forwarding for recommendation.
So one of the questions that's come up is that there have been some complaints by neighbors saying that this has been grandfathered into a use that they don't think fits any longer. So I'm bringing to the table the question, and I think I know the answer, but I want to put this on the record. If we do make this change, does that take away what the historical grandfathering? So this would correct that for the future.
Yeah, their proposed use is like a day center for disabled adults. So that's different. So when they change the use, then that grandfather use go away.
So no longer those other things could happen.
Yeah, so no more contracting.
And for that purpose, I think that it's
Snowplows.
probably a better fit for the neighborhood. We're migrating away from something that has been disruptive to the community to something that probably is less disruptive. I'm not gonna say it's not at all, because I don't know.
That's fair. I think the fact that it's something that's usable for citizens in our community that we would be trading, changing it to is for this specific use, I think is amazing. I think it's wonderful. We need something like this. We have a lot of adults who could use this program, not just our cities, but the neighboring ones. So I think they would get quite a bit of clientele there. And it would quiet down it quite a bit more. And no 4 o'clock in the morning snow loaders or anything like that. Although it might still present its own set of issues for the neighborhood, I doubt it would be as serious as wrecking people's sleep. And that's a big deal.
I mean, in planning, I think professional office is much more suited for this area. I mean, we've got it,
Yeah.
like Noah said, right across the street. But in the planning commission meeting, the representative of the people applying for this, that would be running the day center, I mean, it would always be staffed. There'd probably rarely be evening things, maybe, you know, a birthday party or something like that, that would be pretty low key
Yeah,
compared to loading salt and things like that at 4 AM. It seems like a good fit for being right up against, you know, some residential.
I agree. I think that it's a day use facility. It's not residential. It'll be quiet at night and it's something that Syracuse doesn't have. We don't have anything like this in the city. And there are day programs for elderly that in Clinton and Clearfield, and Syracuse doesn't have anything like it. So I think it's a good fit personally.
It's my social worker side is like, yes.
so are we good to move this to a
Yeah.
consent agenda, or have we got any disagreement with that? Okay, I'm gonna move this forward with recommendation for consent agenda on our next voting meeting. Item number 3,
Quiet down the neighborhood.
recommendation from Planning Commission, application for zone change from property located at 1569 South to 2500 West, residential R1 to residential R3. Applicant is Roberto. Yes, okay, thank you. So you've seen the application. This went to Planning Commission. Give us a report of how Planning Commission saw it.
So planning commission held a public hearing and discussed the item. They did have some concerns. They're forwarding a recommendation to deny this. I think the main reason is because even after the rezone, the intended subdivision we still wouldn't have adequate frontage to subdivide, which is the applicant's end thing. And if you look at the zoning map, which is in the packet here, it becomes kind of an island of R3 around R1.
It barely missed that code, like by a foot or two.
Yeah,
I mean,
So it's kind of crummy.
they
for this
have their
area.
house and then the pasture next door, and they're really close to having enough width, but they're still about 4 feet short. So even with the rezone, they would still have to come in for some sort of variance or something.
I think it's at this point good to note that variances have been talked about all the time. People think they're easy. They're extremely hard. And that is just a legal process that the state legislature puts on us. The requirements are almost impossible. And that's just, it's not something that we have freedom to grant. A variance has to meet the state code. And the state code is, I've never actually seen one meet the state code. Noah probably has been doing this a lot longer, but it's that hard that a variance almost never qualifies.
So I know we don't do flag lots, and that's,
We do
it's kind of our, like, we can't. But did we find out, is this to build a whole nother house,
Yes.
or is it to?
No, it's for his family.
That's, well, I got that, but I wasn't sure if it was like a full house, like a tiny house scenario, or like a smaller, you know what I mean? Like that would make it to where it would be an addition in the back instead of a full-on house.
It's a separate dwelling.
Yeah, I've talked with the applicant, and he does have some options. He could do an accessory dwelling.
Yeah,
ADU. But, you know, he just wanted to be able to, I think it's his son that wanted to build a house. He could answer the question if you wanted that.
Well, my concern is when you talk about a separate property line, then it could, I mean, when it's in the family, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But what happens when they go to sell
Sell
it?
it.
And then you have non-conforming lots in the middle of a neighborhood, and that's not good planning. It's just always a problem when you have one lot that doesn't conform to everybody else.
Well, I feel like what I'm getting at is I know this is something we can't do because we don't do flag lots. It
Yeah.
just creates the biggest safety hazard. So we're kind of beating around the bush with it. But is there another way
Is there?
that if there's another option that they have that they could look at that we could help them in
I
like
think
an
only
AD,
the
yeah,
HDA.
like that. If it's gonna be a family situation, maybe it can be smaller, you know, like maybe we could help them in a different way because we can't do this.
Because if we move forward with this rezone, it still wouldn't, we're just going through the motion.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he still can't accomplish what he would like.
Yeah, but
He
I
could
mean,
buy
we would
property
like
from
him
his
to.
neighbor, maybe, if, you know, his neighbor would have to still retain the proper frontage.
Yeah,
But there might be a scenario where he can buy a little bit of land and then maybe he'd have enough. The R1, I think still requires 100 feet of frontage, so he'd be really short.
Yeah.
You know, looking at the area holistically and long-term, it is near a signalized intersection along a state highway. It is a large lot. There are other adjacent large lots. We don't know what will happen in the future, but
Well,
Does
that's
two-
a concern.
yeah,
I mean-
allowing two actually pretty large lots with newer homes, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if the area sees some redevelopment in the future, is my point.
so you wouldn't want them to waste their efforts. Oh,
Yeah.
is that, I mean, we
Well, I
be a little
mean,
more
they
frank.
still. I mean, the city's not going to, for economic development, we're not gonna like make them.
Well, no, I get that part.
But there's potential there for commercial probably with, you know, in the future for some redevelopment. For economic development, that's my point. But that's not even the application ahead of us.
Yeah.
right?
I'm,
The
Yeah.
question is,
I mean, that's.
I don't see
weird.
how we
I
can do
think,
this.
That's
yeah,
decades away. I'm sorry, but that's decades.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe we should just see if we can help them in a different way, if there's another option or something, because we can't do this. We can't.
I don't think we can, because if we do, you're gonna have every other lot try to do the same thing. And then you've.
And that's a
totally-
fire and PD
it is a
nightmare.
Huge nightmare.
yeah, they could do an ADU, build it in the backyard, they can have a separate driveway, they can have a garage on the ADU if they wanted to.
And maybe you can discuss that with them and yeah, I think that would be good.
So I think we've come to the conclusion we can't really do this, so I'm gonna put it forward on the next voting meeting, assuming that it is not probably gonna get approved.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Item number 4, recommendation for planning commission application of zone change of property located at 3800 West Hammond Lane. This is from A1 and R1 to R3. And we've heard a little bit of public comment about this. This did go to planning commission with recommendation for denial. Go ahead.
Approval.
Oh, for approval, conditional approval.
Yeah, so, so we understand you know, nobody that's trying to develop their land wants delays. We understand the concern. And I can address what they're talking about with this, this study that maybe study is not the right word to use. If you look at our ordinance under the approval standards for a rezone, it talks about how the city should evaluate how the rezone would affect the surrounding properties and whether or not there's adequate utilities, you know, so planning commission, they held their public hearing. There were some surrounding properties that came and expressed some concerns about groundwater and flooding and things and whether or not they're founded or not, you know, that was raised to them and planning commission, you know, said, hey, well, what can you tell us about this groundwater issue? Is it an issue? We don't know. We don't know anything about it. And so rather than hold them up and make them come back, they said, well, why don't we do a recommendation with the condition that he study it out. So that was last Tuesday. So he didn't have a lot of time to prepare a study. honestly, I don't know if there's really much to be concerned about, but it was planning commission's way of saying that they want to do their due diligence and follow our ordinance that says that we require, before we rezone something, we want to understand whether or not our utilities are adequate, which is protecting the health, safety, welfare of our residents. So that it's all in good faith. I think maybe there's a little bit of a miscommunication about what that really entailed. You know, I think they might be thinking it's gonna be a big delay, or they've got to spend a lot of money to do a big study or something like that, but I think at the root of things, I think is what planning commission was asking for, is just help us put our fears at ease. That if there's a development that came in here, are they gonna be able to hook into land drain? Is it gonna cause a flooding issue? And he has emailed me and done some research. He called the Public Works Department, and they provided him with some maps, and so he's been doing that. Unfortunately, because of the quick turnaround time between planning commission and tonight's meeting, it didn't make it into the packet, but he has provided me an email with some of that analysis that I think is sufficient for us to be able to say, like, I don't think there's big concern there. I think he just really got worried that it was gonna be a delay for him.
So procedurally, when conditions like this, when we have some uncertainty about the capacity of our utilities, should this, and I'm not saying, I mean, it's here before us, so we're gonna talk about it. But shouldn't we resolve that before we bring it to the next step?
Yeah, so I could include the analysis that he's completed of the maps for our next meeting, and then you'd have a chance to review it before voting. Or, yeah, it's your choice if you want to ask more specific
If
things.
that's an opportunity, if you think that there's enough information readily available so that we would have, so that we would be voting with confidence, then I'm all for it.
I have it in my email box now. It's
Okay.
just, because of.
So you feel there's sufficient information to move this forward?
I mean, and there was debate amongst the commission
Yeah.
about this. In that, because we've got a rezone and then we'll have an actual development. And that development has to submit an application, it has to submit plans. And I tend to agree with some of the ones that didn't want to put a condition that shouldn't that flush out any of going through the actual site plans and having staff review and things like that. That should take care of any of those issues. So are we putting an undue burden on the landowner?
We'll have lots of time to do all of the very precise plans and studies with the subdivision. It's just.
So I'm hearing staff's confidence that that part can work itself out. My question then goes back to this. We're talking about, whenever we talk about a downgrade of zone that leaps one, the question is, does that suit the surrounding uses and does that make sense? Because when you go from an R1 to an R3 instead of from R1 to R2, which might be just for a minor something, but when you go all the way to R3, are you now becoming an island of zoning in an established area that is inconsistent? Because that's not really, that has an effect on the other people who live around it and their property value.
Yeah, everything around it's an R2. So it does create an island. The applicant says the reason for the R3 is so you can get bigger houses on there with the reduced setbacks. Planning commission, they talked about it briefly. They didn't really have a concern. But I know that that is something that we look at.
Or our setback. I mean, it's.
That'd be all right with R2 right there. R3, I feel like is
Because R2 is.
too much.
Front setback is the same as R3. We've got 5 less on the rear setback. Same side back.
It really hasn't panned out before. I've heard the argument before, but it doesn't really pan out.
I agree that it needs to stay at R2. I think it needs to match the surrounding neighborhoods.
Okay,
I think the difference is so minimal and we had some support from neighbors in the area and.
We talk about this all the time, though, about these small islands.
Yeah.
And the majority of us, including you, are usually against them.
We
Yeah.
need to start
So-
thinking different.
Yeah, I mean, this is,
We need to start thinking different and start respecting our land a little better. And
I'd be okay with R2. I would be okay with R2.
so within the application, do we have the freedom to offer something that isn't being proposed?
Yeah.
Okay, so council, that would be an option.
We've never made a counter offer before. This is kind of
Well,
exciting.
You could make it in the motion at the next meeting, is what I'm saying. You don't have to make a motion for
Yeah,
R3.
The city zoning map is within your.
I mean,
ability to
yeah,
change
it's
it.
possible you could say, look, it's within an R2, so we're comfortable.
I feel like because this is so small and it's basically the only really ag spot out there on Hammond Lane is their place out there that has. If you're gonna develop it, I would say just fit it in kind of with the rest of the neighborhood around it and leave it at, I would be comfortable with R2 because it's such a small area that would be developed that I would be okay with that. It's not a huge development going in, but I think R3 is just too condensed for that space.
I think the difference here, so, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You're up, Jordan.
I always forget he's a.
The big thing here, I mean, I think the difference between the two is a single lot, so I don't think there's a huge risk here. You're not gonna really have, you know, most of the area around here is already developed, so one of the reasons why we don't like to do this big of a down zone is because it generally has a domino effect, but I don't think that's really an issue here because everything around it is done. So I could go either way. I could go R3 or R2. Again, it's a difference of one lot. I mean, if the only change from the one lot is you get slightly nicer homes that increases the property value and is a better thing for the neighborhood, I'm okay with R3 as well. So just my opinion. Yeah, I could go either way.
Guys that are like, we can't spot places in the city. Like, what?
Okay, so keep in mind that when you set a zoning, you don't control what they build on that.
After you see, yeah.
I mean, that's something that
Yeah.
I've heard that for years. Somebody comes in and says, I'm going to do X, but that doesn't guarantee that X happens.
So if
The
you
way I
say-
feel about it is if once you go to the higher density zoning,
Okay,
they're gonna go to the higher density of it. That's
So if
what,
you do R2, then they can still do R3?
no,
Oh,
no, my
if
point
you
is
do
if
R2,
you
then
say,
do R1.
if you say, if I could have R3, I will make nicer homes on it. But once you have R3, there's no obligation. Nobody knows. Whoever buys the individual
right, you don't
lot
know what they're
controls
gonna
what
get,
you
right.
build.
I mean, we just talked about that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
a few minutes ago.
Somebody else
We don't
can
know what kind of
decide to do something different. With that's not a part of the proposal.
Yeah.
So I just find, yeah,
Well, I just feel like Syracuse has grown so fast for so many years that it's time to just slow down and allow growth that has more value to the citizens of
Yeah.
Syracuse. That's it.
okay, so I'm hearing that you feel confident to go forward. We'll just put this on for a vote on our next meeting unless Councilman Craig, I didn't hear from you. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
I would go with the R3.
Okay, all right, so whatever comes out, we'll put it on for vote. It sounds like there's enough to have discussion at that time.
They're entitled to their vote.
This
Okay.
field-
They're entitled to their vote.
All right, so item number 5, potential amendment to Syracuse City General Plan property at 2700 and 2000 West. Change land use designed from medium density to commercial. This is a initiative based on the fact that we have a lot that is split in zoning. Just recommendation is to put it all in the same zone.
General plan.
General plan map. It's not even changing the zone. It's just the same general plan map. General plan map generally communicates to those interested in property, what the city's intentions are in the area. That's.
I have a question.
Yeah,
Is this the property that they came to us with a couple weeks ago?
yes.
So are we just changing it so they can't come back to us with something or what's happening here?
There is something.
The question really comes down to, there are questions about would a different version of the same thing be applicable? That seems to, and so I think we're communicating that the city sees a single use, not multiple.
Have we talked to the landowner? Or we're just going for it and changing their zone? I
It
don't,
doesn't change anything, that in the end, an application still has to be filed.
This is our general plan.
This is just the general map. We're trying to make it consistent,
And when
So
we do,
if we're,
I don't feel comfortable with this.
okay?
when we do a general plan, if we were to examine a general plan. And redo a general plan map, we would make changes without talking to each and every
That's correct.
landowner in a zone. It's,
Happens all the time.
is there a reason why we left off the two lots in the bottom right corner on my screen?
Yeah, because they're privately owned residences at the moment, and they're at least in the same zone as themselves. The only question here is a lot that is got two zones on the same lot. So we tried not to touch anything else other than the one that's half in one zone and half in another.
That's two different lots right there that you change. That are
No,
changed.
one of them is fully in commercial. The other lot has a sliver in commercial and a sliver in medium density.
Yeah, so there's two lots that would be affected. The northern
Yeah.
lot you can see is about 16 acres. They have representatives here in the meeting. They're more than half that's commercial. So you look on the left map.
Yeah,
The second property, I forget how many acres that they are. But you could say they're like, I would say that's like 50%, I don't know, 10-15% commercial. And so the proposal would make both of those 100%. The current zoning on both of those properties would not be touched and would not change what they can do. If they-
Currently.
The current zoning is still exactly the same, but you're right, these are the same properties. that
So this is the one that they wanted, okay,
wanted
so,
townhomes
and we sent
commercial.
them back, go think of something fun, more better commercially and come back to us again. And I actually spoke with them after the meeting also. Now, I think that they were planning on going more of a commercial route, but I thought it was only for the one property, because I believe they were owned by two different families, right?
mhm.
Yeah, there's two separate parcels and they've been trying to work together and they came forward with that proposal with the townhomes and the commercial.
Yeah, we kicked that back.
And we said no.
Be-
So that now we don't have any current applications.
I mean, one thing this does, it signals to developers that says, okay, well, because that one, the development that we all voted against. I think we all did.
We didn't vote, but it was in here, right?
Yeah.
Did we vote on it?
No,
No.
we voted.
We
on
voted
it.
voted on
Oh,
it.
okay, it was the townhomes, yeah, that we didn't
Yeah,
want, yeah.
So we were essentially saying we were voting, hey, we like the commercial aspect, we don't like the townhome aspect.
Yeah.
So this signals, okay, well, we don't want this going commercial with townhomes, so that's what a general plan map amendment does. It signals, hey, we see this as commercially
I'm
viable.
aware of
and
that
that's-
part, but-
Yeah,
So. Is this just kind of, we're doing this to help
No, we're doing this to try and make it clear to anybody who wants to submit
we'll put the
something.
beacon out there, hey, we want some commercial right
And
here.
why aren't we opening the whole thing?
What do you
That
mean,
whole
whole-
square right there,
No, I
that
mean,
intersection.
The whole general plan, if we're gonna do this.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, why are we doing it with this just plus,
Okay,
I feel like
so-
just this one spot is being attacked for some reason. Like, it's not attacked, I don't mean, like, it's being
It's
addressed.
getting a lot of attention right now, and we haven't had time to do the general plan, but I think you're right, we should do the whole general plan. But if we do, my experience is that takes months. And at this point in time, we're getting a lot of interest in what happens to this one spot. So I'm
You can
throwing
always
out,
put in an application.
yes.
I feel like we're-
That's fine.
And like I said, it's the city's general plan map, we can amend it, and we can. If we wanted to update the general plan, we can do all the text and everything, redo it, or we could do one neighborhood at a time. I remember at one time, planning commission used to review a little neighborhood
Yeah.
at a time.
It was a
every-
constant rolling general plan
That
change.
just-
You know, like we could update our general plan the same way.
And I'm actually working on bringing that forward shortly.
I just feel like this is weird that we're addressing just one property for
It's getting a lot of,
I don't think it's that weird.
Well,
It's
why,
not
okay, if
weird
it's
at
getting a lot of attention, it's getting a lot of attention on its own, we don't gotta change anything for it.
We do, we need to
I think
change
we're
it.
responding to what we're
We
hearing.
need to change it for what the city actually wants to have happen there.
Well,
Yeah, but in an entirety.
can't they know when they apply? People know what's going on.
Probably not, it's still
I say
buying
we either
property
open
for
up the whole thing
subdivisions.
or there's no reason
Okay.
to specific do it. That's my question.
I would be okay doing looking at a piece of property that we're gonna continually get townhomes and commercial saying that, hey, this is our signal, we want
Yeah,
commercial in this, but I don't think there's a problem with
I,
that.
I wanna change it to commercial just so we can, but people won't constantly be putting in.
okay.
I mean, I understand, I'm understand, honestly, I'm okay with it. I just don't see the purpose in it. I feel like the landowners know that we've told them, we want commercial, like we've told them. I mean, we've told them, so.
That reinforces
This,
it.
this would make that the purpose. Jordan, we need you to weigh in here, bud.
Why, you got three?
Oh, you're.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I just see the point
Alright.
in it. Like, I
Then it
feel
will go
like,
to planning commission for a public hearing. If we have three. Okay, never mind, Jordan. Doesn't-
Okay.
not needed, sir.
Either side you're on
He's
is
napping,
fine.
it's
It doesn't
fine.
change the outcome. Okay, then we'll just move
Nice
this
to
on to
see
planning
that.
commission where we go to a public hearing. Okay, so let's move on to item number E. Proposed amendment of to Syracuse City Code 4.5 pertaining to the residential household waste
Love these.
containers. All right, where did we leave off on this one? Because this one has gone the rounds.
This is just a simple code change for garbage can, in residential zones, so this is a clarification. We wanted to clearly define the 90 to 100 gallon recycling cans in residential zones. Some of the gray area was commercial dumpsters. We've seen this in two instances I know of where a residential business now is contracting to have a dumpster brought out to their home. That does create a nuisance to the neighbors around them. So we wanted to add this section B about commercial dumpsters larger than 100 gallons shall not be allowed in residential zones. With the exception of two things. The first one is on a temporary basis, if they're remodeling, they're clearing out their house, anything like that, they can have one instance in a 6-month period for a 14-day window. And then the second one is if it follows a building permit, so either new construction or a remodel. So they're tracking that on the building permit. That was it.
Okay. Concerns,
Um,
comments?
I guess one of my concerns is the use, if you're doing a remodel. And it is 14 days in a 6-month, any 14 days in a 6-month period. Is that sufficient if you were doing
No,
Not if
a
you're doing a
remodel?
waste
Probably not.
project.
nope.
We wanted to pick like to me, it doesn't matter what the number of days, we just don't want it to be excessive. So if you wanted to say 30 days in a 6-month or whatever you want.
Well, I just don't want the city telling me if I'm remodeling my house that I can't have a dumpster for more than 14
Well,
days.
I feel like a move out for 14 days makes sense, but a remodel is gonna need some
As
extra time.
proposed, the 14-day limit does not apply to new construction and remodels.
That's what he
There
said.
you
Okay,
go.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, I missed remodeling.
And I think that's.
Like
important
that we have a
because
good
if you
attorney.
have a permit to remodel or build, then you're under different sorts of regulations.
And this is placed.
If
on
you
their-
asked
on their
us, we give
property,
you
right?
different rules.
Well, I think the key here is, if you don't have a permit, then you probably need one if you need a dumpster more than 14 days. And I think that's the key, is, if you're to the point where you need a permit, then.
I question what brought this up, like, do people just have dumpsters outside their house all day
Residential
long?
businesses at home that are now starting to contract with home-based businesses.
Home-based business.
Those are the ones we start to notify that they're getting a little too big, right?
Well, we
And
really
this would
don't,
be,
yeah, this code would help back us up saying you can't have that there. It's kind of a gray area, right?
You can't do
you're
that.
at the point where you're producing waste on an industrial scale.
I
So-
think I agree with this.
So you're not, yeah, your neighbors.
I always just get a little sketchy when the city's telling me what I can do on the property.
I feel that, I feel
Well,
that, I feel that,
Usually ends up.
I
in the
feel that. I try to keep my lawn mowed nice,
That's a
because
different-
code enforcement and I are doing good right now.
Yeah, this dumpster's put on their property in their driveway, right? It's not in the street.
I think it,
A lot
yeah,
of times it's in on the street.
if
They-
it's on the
the
street,
one
yeah,
I
but it's
know
on
of,
the
They
driveway.
can roll it in and out, but I also know that in one of these instances, they're coming at 6 AM to pick it up with the over the top. And
That
pretty
disturbs
loud.
the
and
neighbors.
disturbs-
Sounds like Walmart every morning at 6 AM.
Okay, so we will put this on for a vote either way on the next agenda. Item F, discuss water reservoir project and ordering of pumps for the next season. We have a situation where we have a new reservoir and we may need some more pumps. So talk to us, Robert.
Yeah, so the Syracuse Reservoir was just put into service on July 27th this season. And it's 32 acre feet. It's built so that it could have a total of 8 pumps. We have 2 pumps in there now, 400 gallons a minute each. They're working great. The water supply coming in is staying pretty high, which is a good thing. But there's not a lot of drawdown, so we're not using a lot of, we're storing a lot of water, but because there's only 2 pumps, we're not using a lot. The demand is still out there and happening, and we recognize that eventually we're going to need to add pumps. Now, the time to install pumps is off season. So we
Winter.
look at about 6 months ahead, which is we're kind of coming up on about that time frame, so we can get pumps ordered and installed during the winter months. This is eligible through impact fees for secondary water, so it wouldn't come out of any of our capital user fees or anything. It's new growth that drives the need for new pumps, and new growth can pay for it. So I'm coming to you to see if we could include this in a future like budget opening. I think October.
Particularly, we want to get ordered because there is a backlog and a wait period.
If it's needed and we can afford it, I'm all for it.
I love it when we can use impact fees. We never hear that. As soon as you said impact fees, it's like, they get them. What are we waiting for?
Is it all
We've
the
got
things
that.
We need in one purchase, or is it half what we need and then half later?
Well, there's a spot for a 4th, so we can justify the need for a 3rd right now. There's a spot for a 4th, but we know that we could be waiting as well.
I thought you just said there was
We're talking
8.
about 2 pumps, so there's a total of 8 pedestals there for pumps. We're
Okay.
just looking at 2 more for it, so.
I feel like if the impact fees are accessible for it, just get them. We never get to use those.
So it looks
Nice.
like,
The order in then for the pumps, and that they wouldn't arrive for another
okay, so
4 to 6 months.
we don't,
We can only use
so
it
I'm
for
gonna
the
ask
stuff,
Jordan,
so
you're
he says
back
that. I
on,
love it.
and Brett, I haven't heard from you yet. If we're looking like this is okay, we can put the order in, and it probably wouldn't come to a budget opening until closer to when we actually get them. So this would be a few months off, but I want to make sure nobody's like, borderline against this before, because then we'd have a problem when we have them.
Yeah.
And you've changed your mind.
Oops.
So are we good?
Yes.
Yeah, Jordan?
So what I'm hearing is we have the funds in the impact fee secondary water fund budget. And we can cover these without dipping into general fund or anything like that.
Yes.
And secondary impact, yes.
Secondary impact, yes.
We're getting forward head nods from important
Okay.
people, so I feel
Yep.
like that's a good thing.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and let them order those, and then
Somebody-
the budget opening won't come till when we actually
Put that
have to pay for it.
Boss.
Can I just mention one thing just
Yeah.
real quick? I did include a couple of graphs in there in case you're curious what that's about. We do have a couple, 3 pressure stations that were installed throughout the city on our secondary mains. I looked at a pressure station just 1 mile north of the new reservoir and 1 mile south of the new reservoir, 2 different pressure stations. On that June 27th date, you notice that about 20 PSI increased instantly just with the operation of this new reservoir. So that's a big win for all of our residents. So that's
Great.
awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Nice.
All right, item G is discuss branding for Syracuse City over Halloween.
Miss Kara.
Kara, come join us.
She's one of my favorite people that work for the city. We don't pay her enough.
I know.
She does amazing things. You do amazing things.
We have
Okay,
it's good stuff here. So Halloween is coming. We want to make sure we're branding appropriately. Over the course of the last year, you guys have started calling it Syracuse. So I want to make sure that we're addressing it appropriately. So I gave you 3 different options. You can kind of choose. Do you want to do this? Do you want to adapt your logo?
Yes.
further?
I love Halloween.
okay.
Which one do you want to go with?
So here's the thing, we do have to be conscious of the fact that we are a Brandon City. And I don't mind playing with it on a temporary basis, so,
We're trying to hijack Halloween though, so.
yeah, I agree.
I like the first one, Syracuse.
Why?
I like scary cues.
Okay, that was my second choice, so I'll go with that.
I like the Y instead of the
How,
A.
how
Okay.
far do we go?
That's Halloween, October, first.
And make it orange.
Orange.
Just let Jordan pick whatever.
Oh, my God.
Yes, I like that. Let's go with that. This is my favorite agenda item tonight.
Anyone,
Yeah.
is fine with
The
me.
third one is golden.
But orange, yeah, he's right, orange, like orange and black.
So the
Third,
question
yeah.
would be, okay, so just for the sake of discussion, the question would be, how far do we stray from the logo on a temporary basis? Because you could argue that we're clear because the colors know you're still in Syracuse. Or you could argue that because most of the letters are there, it doesn't matter what color this is. I'm just throwing it out there that part of branding is you gotta be somewhat consistent.
I feel like if you're changing something for branding and you're doing it for like a specific event, you can literally do whatever you want as long as the basic shape is still there to make it look more eventful.
I think people won't even catch it.
I don't think they,
That's
that's
the
why,
beauty
yeah.
of it too.
Yeah,
like it's a
I think
little
that's
trick.
probably more likely.
But but they'll see the cobwebs on and then they're like, what? And then they'll see it and it's gonna make them so happy.
But I think it's, we just have to be selective that it's for events during this time. It's not on anything permanent.
Well, yeah, it's Halloween, for Halloween. First
for
and
the
third.
Unless we want to just think about changing the city's name.
I thought hey, Jordan, didn't we
Well,
decide
was that?
it was supposed to be like September 18th?
Something like that.
31st?
Okay, so
It was after your thing last year that we switched, so it was like the
Wanted to do
18th.
it After Constitution Day.
Yeah, after Constitution Day, that's when we switched to Halloween.
all right, so any other opinions that we haven't heard yet?
The Village Witch, I have a Halloween opinion, okay?
It's okay. And I was more alluding to the fact that Jordan's been very clear. I don't think he's mine, so.
Third,
The third one,
I'm hearing a gravitation toward the third one on the
to the
right.
right, with the Y.
Anybody else have a new, you're okay,
I'm
you're,
fine with that.
Brett?
Maybe change the font to more of a Halloween, just to draw attention to the.
You'd like some blood dripping off the left?
I don't care.
It's
if there's
vampire
blood or
face.
anything. I just think something to distinguish the,
Kind of spookier.
We want to be
Well-
G-rated for the children.
yeah, I'm not saying blood, but I'm
What
just
do you want?
saying.
More
I
Halloween.
said that, I was joking.
Yeah, no, I know that, as
What
a,
do you want an R-rated logo?
yeah, right. I'm just saying, maybe look at the font just to draw attention to that there is a change, because I don't see.
Okay, so
So subtle.
You're
So-
saying,
bring the general
Sure.
gravitation
Halloween it up.
towards the third one, is that what we're agreeing on?
Yes.
Si, senor.
And we will
yes,
play with that a little. Hey, moving on.
Thank you.
Discussion of proposal for post-project report card policy. This is a great idea that Brody brought to the table and.
Of course.
And
he
it's
did.
less exciting.
I wonder what's fun.
Sorry.
No, it's a really good, it's a good idea,
Do
so.
we get to choose a font?
Unfortunately, it's not that fun.
Hmm.
So, yeah, when we have contracts, and this one's really focused on our larger contracts. This is something we've been looking at trying to find a way to do for a long time, because on occasion, we do have contractors that we contract with who
Our subpar.
are problematic, yes, and it consumes a lot of staff time to work with them, to research, to solve problems, to find out ways to get them to do what we want them to do. And it creates an additional demand for additional staff, which this could actually relate to item J.
Yeah.
And so what this policy attempts to do is actually hold them accountable. We give them a rating, we give them feedback at the end of the contract. They know where we stand. And we can actually use the grade system that we have in the policy when we're weighing if they ever submit a bid again. So for example, if they get a lower grade, the policy allows us to actually raise, for evaluation purposes, raise the cost of their bid. So that we can compare it against other bidders. And so,
It
Um,
kind of accounts for the cost of dealing with people who are difficult to work with. There is
So-
a cost.
there is a cost to
There
the
is a-
city.
I said we
Yeah.
should just have a naughty list, and this was Brody's version of the naughty, like, I'm like, can we just have a naughty list? Like, who does the bad business?
So the state law requires us.
This is a
requires
little
us-
more legal.
I know.
Yeah, state law requires us to award bids to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. The problem,
But not if you're on our naughty
the
list.
problem is how do you determine if someone's on the naughty list? And you have to have some objective criteria that you've established.
If we were
Up
taken,
front.
yeah, if we were taken to court and somebody said, my bid was 10% lower. And they would say, so why did you not consider mine a valid bid?
List.
This would give us backup that we could say, in a previous project, you cost me 20%, not just the 10% difference, but 20% more in human,
And we're not gonna do it again.
and we're not gonna go through that because we end up spending more money. So it's to make us defensible is, I think.
So when these low bids come in, like that one that's $1 million less than the other
We
two,
can't
that I
throw it
still
out as
feel
not
like is a
responsible.
problem.
Right, and this, what this does is it doesn't automatically disqualify, it raises them like a 10% higher.
I like accountability.
But
I
it
support
says
this.
we could disqualify them if they have a C or lower.
If they
Yeah.
have a C or lower, yeah.
Would
Sorry.
they be getting a pre-project report card so they know,
Not to bid.
no, to be on their best behavior?
But
and
this
give us
only helps
quality
us
work?
Like, we'll let them know that this is what's happening.
This is our system, this is what your criteria that you will be graded on.
Yeah,
It's not a bad idea.
so
but
we're not
start project
surprising
somebody
you
that's
with
new.
your,
Right.
But this
especially-
also really only helps us with contractors that we
Yeah.
engage.
now, I've got another question though.
Until they come.
They have a
to
track
bid,
record,
yeah.
they build a track record
Yeah.
with us.
But what if other cities ask us for our report cards?
That's
Like-
where I was gonna go next.
Can we share report cards?
Public document.
I love that. I'm for it. Let's do this.
And I'm actually hoping.
I'm so
this-
tired of shady business.
I'm hoping that it spreads and that
Yeah.
we do share report cards so that if we've never worked with somebody, but two other cities say, I have a report card on a
You
project.
probably want to see our report card. Like, yeah.
Because what's difficult, and I will tell you this, I have reached out at like COG meetings and said, has anybody worked with this contractor? They're very new to us. And people will say, oh, that was all before our time. This would actually have a documentation that lives past this council. And that way a future council could say, I'll check. And actually they have.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies that have in the past, I've heard that's, oh, Syracuse is difficult to work with. Well, sorry, bud, you're difficult to work with too. Okay, and I like that we can prove that.
Yeah, and it does, there will be an expiration, so, we recognize that over time.
They can improve.
Personnel changes, they can improve, and that sort of thing, so. But it does hold some accountability.
I like
over
this,
time.
I like this concept. I think there's maybe a few items that are gonna be hard to quantify that are in the list, but I think we'll work through that as.
I fully
Qualitative data
expect
is
too
always
that
good.
as we
We'll have
start
to adjust.
using it, we'll come back and tweak it, yeah.
So is anybody against this?
No, I'm just curious if we're gonna fill out one of these for our Parks and Rec building.
Yes, that'll be the
Yes.
first one.
Okay, so
It's already.
what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, we don't need to
Let's solve
vote on
that.
this. We just let staff continue.
Yeah, I'd like the council to.
They cost us so much money.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that in a formal meeting, but it looks like you have the support to
Okay.
continue.
I do have a question about
Go
the
ahead.
appeals process.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
Where did what come from?
The
The
appeals
the appeals process?
Well, has this been used somewhere else and we're piggybacking it, or is
Not
this
that I know of.
something that's been generated?
Not that
Is
I.
this just out of your brain, Brody? Out of the noggin?
Just half.
It's just chicken.
I like
It
it.
gets
I have
married and look what
concerns
happens.
about the appeals process.
It was her idea.
Yeah.
I would welcome you to share those with Brody as he
Yeah.
evolves, because you have some great experience that we can pull from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
feel
thank you.
free to, and, as far as the appeals process goes, we wanted it to be.
Fair.
Time is money with contractors, so we want it to be fast, we want it to be fair but not administratively.
Overwhelming.
burdensome, yeah.
Okay.
I like this.
Item I, discussion of possible adjustments to wage benchmarking schedule for departments.
I like that too.
There's a couple of parts to this. Let's go ahead.
So yeah, this, what we've got proposed here is to adjust the timing of our departments. Over the last 4 years, 4 or 5 years, particularly in police and fire, the pressure on wages going up has been really intense. And those are already two of our biggest departments. So when you have two biggest departments having major wage pressure, and they're both in the same benchmark year, you get a lopsided benchmarking cycle. So year one, there was a couple $100,000 in benchmarking. Year two, it's over 1 million. So it's really lopsided. This is an attempt to balance that out so it's more digestible, so that it doesn't require or it reduces the need, the pressure to start looking at other revenue enhancing methods.
You could just say raise taxes.
So
Just say it,
This
Brody.
will help prevent us from having to raise taxes every other year,
we
just
hope
more
so.
wages.
we definitely.
Hopefully, yeah. It definitely
So,
evens it out. It
My
does.
question is, how do we go about it? If we do something that makes this adjustment, and clearly, when we started doing department reviews, they had nothing to do, it wasn't based on wage, it was based on understanding changes in the departments. And it just became that was the time that we would automatically do that. So somebody's gonna have to wait longer and somebody's gonna get a shorter review. How do we adjust for that?
Yeah, so, well, first of all, just to give an example, if this were in place, if this would have been in place this year, we could have reduced our issues by $400,000 this last year. So
It's considerable.
but as far as like making it work, I think what we would have to do is we could actually do 2 years of somebody doing each,
Yeah.
half. So we could probably do fire again this upcoming year, and then CED would get another one.
To do this, it would. There would, if we were to put this in place and go through the adjustment. It feels like there's more of a tendency that we will have more of a problem than less of a problem. On the transition years, it will fix it permanently. But the transition years, we're gonna have a little bit extra is what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it'll be a little reduced because it's only 1 year of adjustment instead of 2. So we can run some numbers to kind of estimate what that might be, so this upcoming year.
What I'd like to do
So
is
much
kind of look at this as possible ways and see if we can. The least painful way to go through this. I think there might be choices.
Because of the review timing, the
Yeah.
least painful way on the employees, yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna
what I'm-
affect their pocketbook, yeah. They're people, we talk about them like they're people, we gotta make sure we don't put them in debt or anything. Just by switching with the times that they're reviewed.
So. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's really the proposal. It would require just some text amendment in our policy to do that, so.
And to be clear, this is already an expedited schedule. If I remember right, it used to be a quadrennial review. We've already moved it to 2 years. So I think it's okay to do this, and I don't think anyone's waiting. They're waiting a lot less time than the 4 years they used to be on.
It doesn't make it better.
It really does. Better than 4 years? If you want to go back to 4 years.
It's not a validating, okay.
All right, so I think. This is a discussion point. I think that we need to look through do a little bit of modeling to figure out what's the most painless way to implement, and then come back for a vote based on what we find. So I'm gonna suggest staff do some modeling to figure out how this would be the most even keeled adjustment. Okay. Now, this last one is something I added to the agenda following our meeting our business meeting. I asked department heads in an email if they had things that they could bring to the table that we should consider for possible ways of cost saving measures. And we already do a lot of things. I mean, we look for grants. That's already something we continually do. But I just felt like it was a great open discussion topic on a meeting that we could afford to spend a few minutes. So looking through the room here, I'm going to call on people to tell me if they've got something that they'd like council. And then council, you decide. Is this something that you think we'd like to pursue as an idea and we should flesh out, learn more about it? This is just ideas. We'll start with you, Noah. Did you have anything you wanted to bring to the table as a cost-saving theory or idea to consider?
Yeah, I had forwarded Brody a number of different ideas, that's included here on the list.
Okay,
You know, the instructions were not specifically in my department.
no, they're not.
One of the ideas that I thought was interesting is as we were growing as a city, we have a lot of vehicles, we have a lot of maintenance. I know that in my department alone, you know, we have multiple trucks and we have an admin car too that we drive around a lot, and we take it to Jiffy Lube, and those guys are expensive. Like they have a fleet rate, and I think they see the fleet rate and they're like, okay, all right, we got the city credit card. And you know, I think if we had some sort of in-house or contracted maintenance schedule for fleet management, I know other cities do fleet management in-house, so you have, you know, routine oil changes that might even make the vehicle, if somebody's like watching over it, you know, our guys are really good about keeping their cars clean and oil change and stuff, but I'm sure there are probably a few vehicles around the city that maybe are not maintained all the way. It's good, possibly, so you might be able to get longer lasting vehicles well cared for. So this person or service could take care of oil changes and car washes and, you know, maybe other routine repairs, minor repairs and things like that.
Okay.
Tire rotations.
And one thing I did say is, you know, no idea is too small or too obscure, because your idea might trigger something in another department that works even better. So it's always good to bring stuff.
And in relation to the maintenance, I also met another CED director at a conference, and he was driving this Toyota and it was like brand new, and he's like, yeah, we get a new one every year. I'm like, what? How's that? It's like, we don't even have to pay for it. I'm like, what? How does that work? Like, yeah, we have a lease program. We had to pay $5,000 to get into it, but now every year we get a new vehicle forever, and we never have to pay another dime. So I mean, I guess the relationship to the vehicles and the management of it, we could save some money.
South Ogden used to do that with their police fleet and their maintenance vehicles, and they don't do it anymore because it did not work out, but it ended up being more expensive than.
So I'm gonna report on
I
this
don't
because
know
we
much
brought
about
the fleet maintenance plan came to sewer board because we have quite a few trucks because of the nature of what they do out there. And one of our board members is a purchasing contractor for the LDS church. So he knows a lot about buying vehicles. And he says, you know, I promise you we can get into this where we turn these over and you actually make money. So we tried it with a couple of vehicles. And if you are a minimal wear and tear on a vehicle, you get a good trade-in value, and you may actually make $1,000 trading in vehicles regularly. The problem is, I don't think we could ever do that on like a parks truck that gets tools thrown in the back and are constantly hauling stuff, or maybe a public works vehicle that gets so much more heavier use than, I mean, I got to tell you, my son was interested in a truck about a year ago, and I went to look at one, and it had a sticker on the inside said City of River City or Riverview or something in California. And I looked it up, and it had been a fleet service vehicle. I'm like, this truck is a goner. It has been worn to death. And we didn't buy that truck. But my point is that there are trucks that are more used than the others that are not. And I think that if you had some lower use where the trade-in value is high, it's possible. I don't know if it always works.
I feel like maybe like office vehicles, when you're like office folks are
Yeah.
using those, but once you get into like public works or parks and rec, or
Yeah,
even the
it's too far.
PED, like switching those vehicles out, just the stickers on them alone, getting new ones, it's hard enough, like, come on.
Yeah, I
It
think it's hard.
becomes more expensive than.
I do think, I wonder if we have the scale.
Yeah.
If we have enough vehicles where it makes it useful and that.
Could you imagine having to get a new vehicle after only having it a year? You just broke it and like, really? I just got this. Like, I feel like that would suck.
I don't know what that would be like. I've
I
never.
feel like it would suck having to
I'd be
switch
willing to
everything
try
out
it
after
just
a
once.
year.
Well, usually it's like every 60,000 miles,
That would mean I'm driving something that's
Seriously?
not 10 years old, so that would be a first for me.
18 months. to 2
Crazy.
years, Every 60,000.
Okay, so that's one idea. Did you have some others you wanted to highlight?
I thought people only drove like
No,
12,000
I'll be
miles a year.
remiss if I didn't give my other department heads a chance.
That's a good one. Love that. All right,
That's
Krista,
why they're all here.
I thought you were gonna save me for last.
I was,
I
but
mean,
you,
Trucking
I
down the
knew
line.
the excitement. I didn't want to hold you back.
I know, right? No, for the Parks and Recreation, we just are continuing to do all of our access control and cameras, which is gonna help us to help with vandalism, because we spend so much money on the vandalism. So you guys, with, along with IT, who helps us with that. And then same thing with like irrigation. We are constantly looking for ways to make it hands-free, so people aren't having to show up to the park, and booster pumps and things like that's gonna save us on repairs. We already talked about robotic mowers. What Brody and I have actually talked about is, it sounds like a great idea, but we really like to investigate and see if it actually would save us money. Because in the way we look at it, it may not. And so, really just to investigate that and to see.
They're way more expensive than
One loss.
And then the big cost for us, because like our programs and things like that, we try to have them pay for themselves, is people. And the only way that you're not gonna be able to do that is to have to look at the projects that we do. And if that's, you know, pushing that project back, we've got the regional park coming up, we've got cemetery expansion. And with those comes people, and you have to look, if you're gonna approve that, you're gonna have to add people. And if you don't wanna add people, then we have to look at, okay, if this next year's not for it, the year after is not for it, we need to look at our 5-year plan and push it back until we can hire the people. Because we can't expect our staff to take on a few more hats when we're just finally getting to where you guys have made it so that we're not like drowning all the time. So you don't want to go backwards. But if you want to save stuff, then we're just gonna have to push projects.
Think how strong you've become treading water all those
Right,
years.
all those times. And then the other thing
It's
is,
not necessarily something we
we
should be
wanted
proud
to
of.
look at is the community center usage.
Okay.
Because there's things that we can look at to, is enough people coming to make it worth it on a Saturday? Do we close down Saturday and save the staffing on that? Are we opening at 6 AM and not enough people are coming in until 8? Or maybe we want to expand the hours because it is really busy and it'll bring in more revenue. So we want to, look at that, the review of the community center. So those are the ones that, I mean, there's more, but those are the big ones I wanted to mention.
Good ideas. Steve,
A couple of ideas I've had is, trying to push paperless billing with their utilities. We spend probably $7,000 a month. Maybe even go one step further and encourage like a bill credit. Brody and I have talked about this a little bit. Like $10 or $15 to incentivize them to sign up for paperless billing. And we are starting to make a push for that, but there's not a lot of incentive right now for them. So may not pushes them over the edge. With IT, we continue to try to streamline a lot of our services, a lot of our systems. But there's still more that can be done, where there's always room for improvement. One area we thought about is maybe in our HR system, having an HR system that could help streamline a lot of the tasks that are now manually done. So with IT, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to continue to capture those efficiencies.
Robert.
So, traffic collection data, there are a lot of times when residents will just call saying, hey, there's a lot of high speeds going on my road. I want to be able to, put more stop signs or calm the traffic or whatever. And I work quite a bit with Garrett, his department, and helping the patrol, and I'm looking at data. The only way I can make any changes, I gotta collect data. But there are ways, and some of our neighboring cities does this, where they will have ongoing data collection of traffic. UDOT does it too, in fact. But I'm not talking high tech kind of stuff. So there's that, and then we could get traffic data on demand. It wouldn't only benefit engineering, it would definitely benefit the patrol for knowing, what times of days and what areas do we really have to kind of focus on. So that's something that's out there and available. Certainly costs money to get, but could improve some efficiency and staffing. Smart lighting, this is something that is out there. We haven't done it because it would take some money to, but smart lighting is just lets us know when our street lamps need maintenance. So either it's off, what's the problem? Is it power problem? Is it just the bulb? It needs to be changed out, or the fixture, or maybe there was a knockdown, or maybe someone's messed with it or whatever. But we could know, get a notification if, rather than just kind of driving around. Right now, we just drive around, and mostly it's in the fall and winter time when we have more darker hours. That we can just spot when there's problems that need to be fixed. So we do it that way, and then we just rely on fix-it complaints to come in. So not super efficient, but that's the best we got for now. So road weather information system. This is something that is out there and available. UDOT already has it on all of their state roads. And since we have more of their state roads running through our city, that means they're gonna have more road weather information systems. I'm sure they'll probably put another one, maybe two in Syracuse. I don't know what the plan is, but the road weather information system gives information on forecasts and snowfall depths and accumulation, and then temperatures, the ambient temperature of the air and road temperature, because those are two different. The pavements will hold a different temperature than the air. So getting that information gives us better information. And UDOT uses this to know when to send plows out in advance, so that they get done a little bit more proactively. Right now, the way we do it is we rely on police. After hours, they will call us and say, "Hey, it's about time," and then there's a couple of us that live in the city that will call. Usually I'll get a call and I'll say, okay, I'll just drive around. And so I kind of drive around the city and say, okay, it looks like this area really could use some or whatever.
Is that really how you guys do it?
That's really true. So it's, well, I mean, just to decide when it's time to start sending plows out. Once they're out, I don't do that. It's just, okay, plows are out. So since you already has that road weather information system, it really would just be a matter of not getting our own, but just subscribing to theirs. So
how much is the subscription?
I don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
I haven't looked into it.
It's a good idea though.
And then the traffic car quality. This is actually Steve's great idea, was looking at getting higher quality trash carts. Not high end, but we're spending a lot of time in just labor with broken carts. They are getting warranty, but it really takes a lot of labor from the moment they phone call us and we put the order in to our guys going out, picking up the old can, delivering the new can. Then when we have a big stack of broken cans, then we got to take all those cans up to a place to hopefully dispose of them. And it's so inefficient. So if we can get just maybe a little bit higher grade of quality can. So we're looking at different can manufacturers, suppliers. So that's a good thing.
All right.
I didn't even realize you're supposed to can out.
First one I have is to look at signing up with a grant services company. This comes in essentially three forms. First one would be like a grant finder. So we, as department heads, this doesn't have just police, this is everybody, but you can go into this system, put in keywords of things that you would like to see, and anytime these grants come open, you get automatic notifications of the grants. You don't have to go out. The next level would be the grant writing services. So if you sign up to this level, they basically give you unlimited help with your grant application development and review. So we still have to do it, but they kind of give you the information that says, yes, we like your proposal here, or no, you may need this kind of data to make this work. And then the last platform is for actual grant assistance. And in this circumstance, they provide us a few licenses a year. You get two full grant applications a year, and discounts on any additional grant applications that you wanted to do. So as an example, although I'm sure Aaron is a brilliant grant writer, when you have this massive safer grant, that's one that would actually make sense for the city to either say, yes, we'll spend a little bit of extra money to have this place write it for us and walk us through it all. or this is one of our free ones and we're gonna use it, right? That use these on the ones that have substantial ability to impact the city.
Does the city have a grant writer right now?
We don't.
We do not. We have had in the past. I think that previous councils decided that wasn't a focus as much as it could be. And to be fair, I think that there's two levels of that we have to discuss if we consider it, because on the one hand, it seems like it would be a no-brainer, it would pay for itself. But there are a lot of grants out there that you can't get every year. You know, you can only get so often and things like that. So is it a full-time job? We'd have to discuss, but it's not a bad idea.
So the grant writing is such a specialized trained skill that the simple grants, they're fine. Anybody can pretty much do those. But some of them, they don't just want your firstborn child, they want your first ex-spouse and they can have that one, but they also want your next soon-to-be spouse also, and that's unfortunate. So when you don't have to put that up for collateral, it's nice to have someone that knows exactly what they're doing. And you know, when you have someone that's so specialized in a grant writing skill, like 9 times out of 10, you're almost guaranteed that grant. And it's a real nice, like, they speak for themselves when they just get grant after grant after grant approved. You're like, okay, so you clearly know what the hell you're doing.
You bring up, you bring up one challenge though, and that is that some of these grants are so specialized that if you
They're
don't
hard.
understand that one, I mean, you could be failing on it over and over again.
Yeah.
Because like, I know some of the arts and museums grants are really, if you don't understand what they want and in which boxes to check, you're gonna have a hard time getting them. Anyway, my point is, when you look for a general grant writer, you don't get that specialization, but you do get the general grant writing stuff. So it's a double-edged sword sometimes.
Was there ever an exploration of somebody working, a grant writer working with a couple of cities, 2 or 3 cities? I've heard of that.
Independent and just works on commission.
Kind of like how we have our victims advocate that works through a couple cities,
Or that we're,
you know?
We've contracted, it's not the same thing, but we've contracted with a grant writer before that works for other cities too, but.
Yeah.
And only works on commission.
But not hired. It was like a flat fee per
yeah,
application.
most of them make you pay no matter whether you get it or not, because it's such a risk.
Yeah. It's time consuming.
But it's a good idea. That's a really good idea to think about sharing the person, because one thing that I've noticed, Layton always gets these things because they're a bigger city and they can afford to pay a full-time grant writer. They're the only one in the county. But if we were to take some of these other big cities and share a grant writer, maybe we'd all be able to compete.
But
with Layton.
wouldn't that same, we'd all be going for the same grants.
Well, that's a good consideration. Yeah, that's
might be the problem with sharing.
And half that
But some
problem
of them
with
you can't
finding
get every
that, the database of grants, that alone is a big deal, because I have spent hours and hours and hours online looking for grants that are available in different areas, and that alone is so time consuming, just finding them, let alone applying for them.
It's a very reputable company. I mean, Aaron and I both use it for our policies and procedures. They're very big in public sector stuff with people who are their grant writers. I mean, they're professional grant writers.
I feel like we should talk about this.
I do too.
Utilize them for the Saber grants. We'll see how that goes.
Okay.
Well, then we should call
So-
them and get their grant writer.
So let's go back to see what else,
We couldn't pay him enough.
what else Chief's got on the table for us.
Mayor, because you said no item was too small. I looked
Yes.
at printing stuff, and if we establish a
Yeah, I don't
policy
think
that
anybody's
says
at that point in
the
their life
city
anymore in this
default
day and
for
age.
providing grandma responses is to do it in
I'm not
email
sure.
by
I think
PDF.
everybody's to the point
It's
now where
allowed
they're
by
gonna
state
afford it, they're
law.
not getting their time.
And we can
Council.
say, but I think we need to say this is across the board, like this is how Syracuse does grant, or does
Is that
grant.
legal? That's a great idea.
Now, Cassie already does most of them like this. And a lot of ours are already done like this, but this is like codifying that this is how we do it.
And it sounds like all we'd have to do is pass an amendment to our city code. Something small, a policy. I think that's a quick savings.
Second part of this is to adjust all city computers so that by default they use a Times New Roman 11 or even better, a Century 10. The University of Wisconsin at Green Bay claimed they saved 30% on ink by switching to the Century Gothic 10. And the reason is because it's a thinner font, which requires less ink and allows more words per page. So you reduce the number of subsequent pages.
Arial is one of the most
And-
expensive to print.
Mason told me, he's like, yeah, it worked. I mean, we have to go into every machine, but they can set it so that these are the defaults. Like you literally have to take effort to
Yeah.
change it.
But it's amazing how much money that actually saves. Like just because of the way it changes. Yeah,
So-
it does. It's actually, when you print that much stuff, it becomes a
Right.
big difference.
For decades now, there are places, cities and universities that have gone completely paperless. And said we just won't print anymore. Now, I'm not saying we go to that extreme, but maybe we
My
should
ADHD and autism model.
expound on this and look and say, how much
I
could
must
we,
have form paper.
how much could we eliminate by saying we're just not gonna print these particular items anymore?
Well, I'd be like, you're gonna print it for me, no. Just so we're clear. And how many times have I almost thrown it at the wall?
Okay, all right, let's hear some more.
Our officers spend a lot of time on reports. I mean, literally everything they do is a report waiting to happen. It's one of the hardest skills to teach, and most of them are not exceptional at typing. So, I was looking at ways that maybe we could improve the speed. Now, granted, these are all gonna cost money in order to figure out what this is gonna do, but the officers, when they're typing, they're not out in the community, they're not available for proactive or community-oriented activities. So first one might be to send them to an artificial intelligence symposium, where we can learn exactly what AI is able to do. Next one might be the use of dragging speech to text. We tried this a long time ago. It didn't really take. Maybe the technology is better now.
The technology's come along.
The one I would really be interested in, although again, I know this is gonna have a cost to us, especially initially, would be evaluating the feasibility of changing our body and in-car cameras to a different vendor. I watched this tape happen to where the officer came in, said something along the words of transcribe on their body camera, and it literally transcribed what they said to the person directly from their body camera. And they can attach that into their report. So there's no more, I said to this person this, and they said this.
It just
It comes right
transcribes.
in and does it. It was
There was-
mind blowing.
There's a new one out
The
there.
Otter, was it Otter or whatever was in here? Isn't it that thing that I sent to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it recognizes the voice and that's what it does. It transcribes it right then.
So
There is a new one out there that will translate live and it is so accurate that you can do it and you can say, print transcript. It will take up to 2 hours of transcript at once and just transcribe to a report. So it is improved a lot. This is one I only saw in February, but I went to a workshop. It was amazing. So I do think we have to look at this because I think it's come a long way in the last few years.
So I know that RPD is very in depth with their reports, but it keeps them out of court, which is amazing. And so they do spend a lot of time on those, and that does take up a lot of their availability. So that, I think that alone would
It's
be.
important.
We could look for a contract with a company that privatizes the crossing guard function. So this would free staff from hiring, scheduling, training, payroll, workers' compensation. They generally want to keep your crossing guards, so they try to keep them at their same wages, and they want your staff and they recruit from the local area.
That might be a thing.
And then just another one, I would say maybe we authorize some kind of exploratory report or concept, whatever you call it, to determine the benefit and feasibility of selling the current PD property and possibly some of that adjacent detention pond area behind it, and then building the new PD on the lot east of City Hall. It seems like it would be a pretty valuable commercial spot right there in that area.
That PD. It's. It's still haunted.
Less people that have to maintain.
There are lots of people that,
You guys want boxing gloves?
there are lots of people that want to buy some of that property. A good one. Chief Byington.
Yeah, but it's valuable to them. No, it's not. It's perfect.
So
That
fire
or the other one.
department, we had a reevaluation of service agreements for fire protection with unincorporated Davis County and with the state for Antelope Island, just to see if there's any kind of adjustments in there that could bring in revenue, since some of those have not been looked at or updated for quite a while.
Costs are going up. They need to pay us more.
Impact fee study update. When we did our last impact fee study for public safety, especially with the fire department, it was based on a very elementary cost of another station at about $7.5 million. And I think I'd have to look back at it, but I believe that engine was, fire engine in the impact fee study was about $750,000. And we know that that's about 1.2 million, and we know the cost of the station going in. So maybe a reevaluation of that to bring in more impact fee. And then the last one was some fire academy operations. We've got some at the new station. We've got some of that training land in the back that we could put some kind of a live burn tower on, have some fire academies, and bring in some revenue for people wanting to get into the fire service. There is going to be a cost of entry to that, so it'd be a little bit costly to get it started, but it could be revenue generating, and it could also help benefit Syracuse City in our training our own folks, especially the live fire training, which is required by NFPA to do every year, and it gets a little bit more difficult each year to do, but it'll also help with the pipeline of recruitment. So there's a few things right there. So plus, and that was.
Cassie's on.
Cassie,
Hi. So
did you? Go
I
ahead.
have a couple, yeah. So I'll just piggyback off Garrett's really quick since you guys were talking about AI for report writing, and Jennifer mentioned the Otter AI was listed in the staff report. So that one was my suggestion. I've been like working with just kind of a work group of a couple other recorders in the area, and we're just testing a couple of different AI platforms that can help to transcribe minutes. And the Otter AI one is the one that seems to be doing the best job so far. So I'm just still testing it, and I'll probably start using it a little bit in minutes. But if it's something that we can really fine tune, we could push it out to everyone in the city that has to provide minutes for public bodies. And then another one that I've actually talked to Marisa about this before, and she was going to look into some options and maybe work with IT, but just online scheduling programs for the services in the city that are scheduling appointments all the time. So obviously passports and the justice court, if someone could just access through our website a scheduling tool to help them schedule their own appointment with the city, and they don't have to call, and people are spending however long on the phone scheduling those appointments. It wouldn't like reduce current staffing levels or anything like that, but it would just help us avoid needing to increase staffing levels in the future.
Yeah.
And then I did throw on there, but this is obviously something that I don't ever want to explore, but if it came right down to it, would be not recertifying the justice court the next time we go through that process. And that would shift all of our justice court services back to the county or the state. So we obviously wouldn't have to staff it, pay the judge and all of the administrative costs of operating a justice court. So those were the three I think that I had on there.
Thank you. Colin.
You've all heard it said that a lawyer's stock in trade is his time. I have a very small department. So I can't offer you much in the way of saving money, but I can get more efficient. The more duties that I can push down to my assistant, the more time I have available to get to things that aren't currently getting done. And so we're working on that now. I've got a relatively new assistant, but she's doing a great job. We're already starting to push some of the more mundane tasks I have her direction. It's much better for the city to pay her $20 an hour than to pay me $55 an hour.
Okay.
The other thing I must know is that if you change the font size, Brett, you don't get your chiller font on Syracuse.
We'll make an exception for that one.
This is way too much ink, I can tell you.
I do like that font.
Brody, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, well, yeah, first of all, on the report card policy, I want to make sure the council's aware that almost nothing in government is done by one person. So a policy like that is developed with input from everybody here. Just like this process that we're doing right now. And I'm on the AI bandwagon. I think its impact will be larger than the hype. And so things like, first of all, one of my ideas would be to develop a task force, like an innovation task force that's made up of kind of a cross section of our employees. So I think a lot of the great ideas for cost savings and better efficiency are going to happen from the people on the front line. And if we have a task force that's just designed to research, it's kind of like a shoestring R&D group to research these things, to vet them, to try them out, to pilot them, see where they would improve efficiencies, and then we can institute them. Going along the lines of what Chief Atkin was saying on sending his officers to like an AI training, a citywide AI training, I believe that a lot of our employees still don't use AI in areas where they could. And they probably won't unless we actually provide training and show them specifically how they can do processes with it. So implementing just, your basic, staff training on how to use AI, I think when you multiply that across all the employees in the city, you get tons of efficiency. And then things like, chatbots online for, on the website, they're historically bad, I think, but they are getting a lot better to where if we have a trained AI chatbot on our website to answer questions, I think that will reduce the need for front desk and will reduce the demand to hire additional front desk as our city gets bigger.
Question. Has anybody in this room ever actually used one of those chatbots?
Yeah,
on there?
very successfully.
Do you? Yeah, anybody else? Okay, I've wanted to throw this thing at the wall. Yeah, thank you, chief. Thank you. Thank you for being honest.
That says chat now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, but
never mind.
I'd rather use those anyway.
All right. I'm glad some of you do. I hate
It's
those
an
things.
endless loop.
So
Yeah, I hate those
So
things.
Actually, there's
that's a
some
few.
getting some really good ones, because you can, I mean, this is a world that I live a lot in, but there are ones that you can say, I need you to do things within these parameters. I used for about 5 years a automated secretary that would schedule people appointments, and I just checked when I wanted it to make me available, and they would automate responses like, oh, Mr. Mon's not available at these times, but he could be at these times. And I got so much more done, and it didn't cost me a thing. And her name is Clara, because it wasn't named by me, it was named by my predecessor, but she saved me dozens, I mean, so many hours. It was amazing. I would do it again.
Clara. Banana bed.
I remember when I first started with that company and I asked, who is Clara? And they're like, yeah, she's not real.
Damn, I was gonna send her flowers.
She's doing a great job.
She deserves a cookie.
So, yeah.
I mean,
All right.
there's others if you want, they're in the packet.
Council, did anything stand out to you as things that you could add to, or do we should?
The mechanic. I think we need our own fleet mechanic that, and I'm only saying this because I grew up on a dairy and a beef ranch, and we had our own fleet mechanic, and he saved our company. So Ralphie, I tell people, if you have enough people to have a Ralphie, get yourself a Ralphie. He saved us so much money. He knew everything that was wrong with every vehicle, all the quirks they had, when they needed maintenance. Having as many fleet vehicles as we have, having our own mechanic would save us a ton of money.
We have talked about it a few times, and I think we are getting closer and closer to where that's probably a real.
We need a Ralphie. If his name was Ralphie, that would be even better. I would
Okay.
love that.
So I think anything, and it's probably more aligned with Brody and some of you that have mentioned artificial intelligence. I think anything that allows our current staff to accomplish more is going to be our key going forward, because each person that's our biggest
Yeah.
expense. So process automation software that has an artificial intelligence component. I mean, I don't understand all of your departments. I understand what I do for work and how it applies to me, but think about any time you have to respond to an email or you have to physically be at your computer to do something. That's what that process automation will do for us, whether it's, someone puts in an online submit or submits an online, development plan or something, and there's an initial review that's done by artificial intelligence and says, hey, we've identified these key problems. Those types of things are going to, those are going to be game changers for us. The other thing, and again, in the private sector, we can do maybe some things that we can't in city government, but I use remote team members. I don't know how feasible that is at a city government level, but sometimes artificial intelligence and process automation can't do everything. You still need a human to do that. But those remedial, mundane tasks that we don't want our staff doing, to expand their capacity, remote team members are something that are deployed heavily in the private sector, meaning
Pay someone from the Philippines.
that is a college educated person that works for much less than
Right.
someone here in the United States,
Right.
but to them it is a very good paying wage.
Yeah. I have some of those on my team too.
So we outsource. What
Yeah.
you're saying? Yeah, I'm all for everybody having
Yeah.
employment.
Yeah, they're they're
I don't care what
capable
country you're in.
people, the economy where they are is just different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and again, it's not taking a job away from someone
No, it's a
here.
job we don't have. to
It's a
create.
job we don't want to do, and they're very happy to have a job like that.
I feel like as long as we're employing, you know, like I don't care where you live.
Well, going forward then, do department heads come back and report, this is what we want to do next step for their particular thing? Do we dedicate time in a meeting like this on a periodic basis to do? I mean, I think this is great that this has been
I
put
think,
together. Where
I
did they
think,
go?
yeah, there's a lot of different ways we could go. I think maybe one of the things that is standing out to me is maybe we have a interdepartmental committee that meets once a month and reviews some of the suggestions that come up and see if there's any way that it could be cross-department implemented or
Vetted and tested.
tested, just find out where, because some of these things that may work in one department may work even better in another, and we should just share them. Other things won't prove out to be great, but the other thing that, one of the things that I wanted to bring to the table as an idea is there are a lot of testing opportunities. I've been in an environment where I see a lot of trade show environment. I used to go to trade shows all the time, and a lot of the times when new products come out, the first person to be an adopter usually gets something like a 3-month or a 6-month test of a new product. And I'm thinking of how many things we might be able to get for free as a test, just for giving honest feedback to a developer. We've tested things at the sewer plant that way before, where somebody said, would this work? And we say, we'll try it. We'll give it a 2-month trial and see if it improves things. I know that there's been equipment out there that have been innovative. I think of one that I was really interested in. My brother does some management up at Weber State. He tested out a sidewalk size snowplow that you ride on like a standing lawnmower. He says for the sidewalks up at Weber State, he says it's been a lifesaver. But he got to test it out for 6 months for a full winter before he had to buy any of them, because they're like, we understand you'd probably buy 2 or 3 if you like them. So I'm thinking that we ought to investigate more in try and buys. I think that, this could even be a citizen committee where we meet quarterly or monthly and say, has anybody brought anything in from the private sector that the city could consider as a cost savings, and open it up to the public if somebody wanted to bring an idea. It's just another way to implement, the brain power that's out there. I'm open to those things, but I think with first step is, how do we want to go about trying, because we can't use every council member or meeting this way, but I think this was good time. So the question is there a format? Do we want to make it a suggestion box? Do we want to make it a suggestion committee? Do we want to make it, those are the next steps, I think. And then from there, we test some of these things out, and if they work, we implement them.
So I feel like.
I still have a couple I'd like to discuss.
Go ahead, Jordan.
Sorry, were we done going through the council? I just
No,
didn't
go
know.
ahead.
Sounded like
Your
Dave was
turn.
wrapping up.
Your turn.
Well, for one, I still think our online forms, where we're getting closer, but I still think, especially this year, as I've been filling out stuff for the school district and having to sign waivers and everything, the school district has made it really easy to sign forms and all that kind of stuff. I think we've improved a lot, but I still think there's a few of our forms that we still need to automate and make it so that someone doesn't have to come in, interact. I'm not sure if we've got there, like, for example, building permits. As long as they submit a PDF of their improvement and declare the square footage, I think that's all we really need for some of these. But yeah, I think some of those can be further automated. And I also think we need to really decide if we really want meandering sidewalks. So I know those are very hard to plow in the winter and just maintain in general, because your lawnmower has to do a zigzag as it goes down alongside it.
Okay.
So those were a couple that I want, but I think would improve some efficiencies.
Anybody else?
I think there's certain things on that list that we can look at cost effectively in a way of, like, for example, mechanic. We know what it costs to take one of our fleet vehicles to Jiffy Lube for an oil change, to compare that to what the actual cost of the oil filters, things that they put in, what that would cost us as a city, like, and how many vehicles do we have? Like, certain things like that, we can get a small idea of what the cost is gonna be in saving wise. And I think those are the things we should look at first. Things that we know we can identify costs on and compare them to.
I think you need a task force that determines what are the highest priorities. If I were on a task force, I would say looking at expanding the I can't think of the word, expanding the capacity of our current personnel. You've got to have you have to identify the objectives, and then you've got to have a team to identify the objectives, and then what are the things that we are going to try and implement to meet those objectives. I think a task force, because there's, multiple different departments, I think that would be a good place to start.
So I'm thinking Brody and I'll talk a little bit with staff and come up with some ideas. We'll bring the ideas back to you. You decide which ones sound better. But again, for starters, I just wanted to give everybody a chance to throw out some of the good ideas that have been batted around and see if there aren't some that either A, generate a few other ideas, or B, might be just something we could implement right away. And it sounds like we have a couple that we might flag as quick wins that we could look at. But that was my point tonight, is it worth continuing this type of brainstorming? And I think it's something we have to do. That's just me.
Money saving is always worth considering.
Yeah.
I was kind of intrigued by the no justice court idea. Do neighboring towns have justice courts?
Some don't.
It's very inconvenient for citizens, though. Like, and you have a lot of citizens that can't get
Do
to
we have a lot of
Farmington.
citizens going to the justice court?
Well, what is it, Tuesday or
You'd be
Thursday? You'd be
surprised.
surprised. Like, it's huge.
grown a lot.
It has, and we're the size of a city to where having one is relevant.
Since COVID, our justice court has been largely
Online, yeah.
It's almost completely virtual.
Oh.
Which has been a cost savings.
It has been, and I think it's better for citizens. They don't have to come and sit here for 4 hours waiting for their 15-minute case to be heard.
Or that it was dismissed.
If we do away with our justice court, depends on what happens to it, but there's a good likelihood that gets shifted to Farmington, which does not have virtual court from my understanding. And now our citizens get to drive to Farmington for that 15-minute case. So there's pros and cons of losing the justice court. Expense obviously is the biggest concern with the justice court, but there's a lot of benefits that you get from having one.
Cassie.
Well, and in addition to our residents not being able to come to Syracuse City for justice court, any officer that writes a ticket that gets referred to another court would then have to travel to that other court to appear for a case. And so there are still going to be costs associated with dealing with justice court issues, but we wouldn't just have the service central in Syracuse. So I do think right now it is a service. In the past, we've actually generated revenue through our justice court. And then, the last 5 to 6 years, it's fluctuated where some years we're generating a tiny profit. Other years we're barely covering our expenses. Some years we've even subsidized it a little bit. And so I think you would always just want to keep evaluating that and monitoring, the funding situation before you made the decision. I'm just saying next time we do recertify, it comes around every 4 years and we just barely did it last year. So next time we are faced with recertification, we could just maybe more closely examine it to decide if it's something that we do want to pursue. But the state may be making decisions between now and then that takes that decision out of our hands. There's always legislation that deals with the justice courts in every session. We're expecting some again this year. So it's just one of those things that's always kind of a moving target.
I'm not for being hard on people, but I think that if we were less forgiving to repeat offenders, we probably do a lot better. We've gravitated towards a lot more forgiving court.
I feel like you got those cities when they're like, oh, our cops are so ticket happy, they got to meet a quota. This reinforces the fact that we, in fact, do not have a quota that we have to hit. And I tell people about the justice court all the time that our cops don't write tickets because they have to. They write them because you did something wrong. And the cost of our justice court will validate that.
I just think that I'm okay. And I think that I love the policy that is more forgiving initially to first offenders.
Yeah.
But I hate that people who are 3-4 time offenders still manage to get off.
I feel like that's a judge thing though. That doesn't.
It is a judge thing. It's not.
You should probably talk to her about that.
It's not up to us, but I think that when it comes to justifying the expenses, at some point, people gotta be accountable. Anyway, anything else? Jordan, anything else?
Nope, those were the two that everything else has been said.
Okay. I appreciate it. I think the last few minutes that we spent on this was well worth it, and we are adjourned.